This is your captain speaking.
Welcome back to This Is Your Captain Speaking, where we're giving you access to New Zealand's top technology leaders and their stories. Today we're meeting with ex-CEO of Triquestra, Kelly Brown. She's telling us all about her perspective of the New Zealand tech sector and the trials and tribulations of bootstrapping a company to exit in a trade sale. Hi, I'm Julian Levitt. I'm one of the directors of Potential. I lead the leadership search function there. We're the largest technology recruitment business in New Zealand.
Oh, hi Julian. Nice to meet you. I'm Kelly Brown. I am a leader myself. I have recently exited a software company and had a year off. So.
Oh, lovely.
Yes.
La-di-da.
Yeah. Very nice to meet you.
So what's on your mind as a leader at the moment? You've had the time to kind of get out of the business and have a bit of reflect about things. What's on your mind as a leader at the moment?
Oh, I think, it's been actually amazing to have a year or 12 months to think about, to just step back and think a little bit more broadly about what's going on in the sector and what's going on in the world. So I guess what's going on, what I'm thinking about is the increasing pace of change,
yes.
Everything that's happening in the sector, and, really kind of excited about where the industry's going.
Yeah. I mean, you said you just exited. How long were you in the business for?
18 years from start to finish.
Almost as long as me.
Yeah.
I'm just coming up on 20.
Oh, well done. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah. Long journey. Started with Triquestra very much early stage and built through to exit. So, while 18 years seems like a long time, it really felt like sort of 4 careers in one there with, the changes that go on in a business that grows over that period of time.
Right. What did Triquestra do?
We developed and distributed a global unified commerce platform.
Right.
Yeah. For retailers, enterprise retailers and government point of sale, inventory management, loyalty, business intelligence for enabling retailers to provide an omni-channel experience across all the channels they engage with customers. Yeah.
Right. Trade sale,
Trade sale, big and B2B, retail, convenience, the whole gambit.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. I mean, the New Zealand product development sector is the shining light in our tech sector, and obviously I believe fully that it is going to be the largest lever to the financially and socially responsible future for New Zealand. So well done.
I agree. Thank you.
Building it and getting out.
Oh, thank you. It was definitely a team effort, but very enjoyable. Yeah.
Nice one. So you've been out for 12 months. What's something that no one really knows about your leadership and what that journey was like?
What they don't know about my leadership. I don't know. I'm a pretty open leader, actually. So I think anyone that's worked with me probably does know my leadership style. Right. Lots of people don't know me, obviously. I'm a little bit of an under the radar leader.
Right.
So, yeah.
What does that look like? When you say under the radar, do you mean like not a big public profile, or do you mean that you keep inside the business?
Oh no, I mean not a big public profile. I very much believe as a leader in getting out and understanding the environment that you operate in. So, being very external facing.
Right.
I'm not big on public profile.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so with that kind of journey, did you end up raising money for that exit, or did you end up bootstrapping? I mean, are you one of those glamorous bootstrappers?
Yeah, no, we bootstrapped it. We bootstrapped it all the way, baby.
Right. Good job.
Yeah.
Good job. I mean, and what drew you into a leadership role originally when you kind of embarked upon this journey? Were you a leader before Triquestra, or? Yeah,
I think from a professional sense, my leadership journey, started in corporate. I had a decade's worth of experience in corporate telco primarily, and electricity and energy at the start of my career. So that's where I kind of started my professional leadership journey. But I'm also a big believer that leadership isn't constrained to a professional environment. So, I like to think that I probably started a little bit before that. Right. But, yeah.
Head girl, or?
No, definitely not head girl. Leadership probably in the school environment was not my introduction to leadership. But, I think probably started quite young in terms of, I think leadership is about being able to think about what the future might look like and what the future might hold, and then to be able to motivate people towards it. So probably actually the best example, my first foray into leadership probably was of my little brother. I'm really lucky.
Right.
For those of you that know Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENTP. So
yes.
Extrovert, big thinker. My brother's the complete opposite of me, which is INTJ, and so he's very much the executor, the guy that gets things done. So, I discovered very early on leadership. That was my earliest lesson, probably in leveraging different people's skills and capabilities to fill gaps in my own. So,
Inferno. Isn't that cool? Like I want to talk about that, the Myers-Briggs stuff and the reliance that you have around selecting people a little bit. So when you do think about that leadership, because obviously you talk about leading people. Leadership's not just about leading people, but it's a pretty critical element. So, when you think about building teams, when you think about things like selecting people to work with, do you look at those Myers-Briggs things? Is that a key part of a rigorous and benchmarked assessment of the way that you bring people into the organisation or the way that you lead them?
The formal frameworks sometimes, but probably the biggest thing that I look for in terms of bringing people into a team is, really starting with being really disciplined and focused and detailed about what we are looking for and what the business needs, what the specific business needs, what the specific environment needs, and what the specific role needs at that point in time, and being really diligent around understanding the strengths that we're looking for. I really resonate with concepts that I first learned around hiring for strengths rather than for the absence of weakness.
Sure.
So I think...
we resonate on that.
Oh, really?
In
yeah.
recruitment, absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think, what the temptation is certainly earlier in my career would be looking for really an all-round person. And sometimes what that means is you compromise on some of the strengths that you're looking for. So if you can be really specific and really focused about those strengths, you can hire someone that's the absolute best in that and manage their weaknesses. Is my kind of view on it.
Absolutely. And if you just a couple of things around that. Like if you've got a set of skills and you can identify what that set of skills is around individuals that you're bringing into the organisation, I think that you're able to create a really high-performing team, and this sounds totally obvious, but as long as the leader knows where you're going and you're able to map those skills against the competencies or the capabilities that you need to be able to deliver your plan, it goes all the way up. So the look-through is from, okay, this is the direction we're going, this is the resources I need, these are the skills I need to be able to execute it, this is how I'm going to execute it, so therefore I'm going to bring in these people.
Yes.
But it's so surprising how few people think in that kind of level of framework, right?
Yeah.
And an understanding about what the incumbent skills are.
Yes.
And then saying, well, this is the gap, I'm going to find the best person. And funnily enough, when you hire people for strengths, they thrive because that's playtime for them, right? Like they're doing the things that they love to do, whether you get paid or not. So I think that it's a really good insight.
Yeah.
But being able to assess those things in a rigorous and systematic way, I think that is hard, especially if it takes a long time to hire someone. Because then you're like, I can compromise on this, I can compromise on that. But holding the line on those things, is that how you're able to get the high performance and get the right?
100%. I agree with you 100%. And particularly in a tech business where you have a range of skills that the leader, will usually not be able to have experience in many of those things at all. You really need the very best skills you can get, and they need to be really complementary. And when you're also taking that approach of getting the very best of that strength, and that means accepting, sometimes more work-ons, that can make, if you really, that's a really fun and sometimes quite challenging exercise to bring those teams together.
Yeah.
So, and I love doing
and
that.
acknowledging that no one's a finished product.
Oh,
right?
no,
And so there is going to be growth. Growth might be painful, as we've all learned.
Yeah.
But understanding that the fundamentals are there and that you can develop.
Yeah.
You can develop the work-ons, yes.
Yeah.
And you're not trying to fill those weaknesses, but you're getting up to a level of competence where they're functional and they're operational within the environment.
I guess my take on that as well is sometimes it's not actually improving on those work-ons, it's actually creating more awareness around them and creating more self-awareness, because I actually believe that it's often a lot more productive for everyone involved to focus on developing the strengths rather than on the weaknesses.
There's a fellow, I don't know if you know him, called Ray Dalio, and Ray Dalio wrote a book called Principles, and one of the key takeaways I was put onto this by, I can't remember who I was put onto it by in the end, but it was a great book. He ran Bridgewater Finance, which did very, very well out of the GFC. But what he said was he was so transparent about these things that he actually made everyone carry a baseball card with them with their strengths and what they were good at, so that they could turn up to a meeting and be like, oh, this is what I bring.
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
And like that's real radical candor when you get to that sort of thing. But there is an acknowledgement, and I think you got to kind of, some people will protect the ego to say, look, I can do anything.
Yes.
But the acknowledgement of saying, actually, I don't like to do that. I'm probably never going to like to do that. And, if you want to work with me, you can accept that, or you can do the hard way of dragging me through to be able to do the things which I'm going to default back to doing the things that I like to do anyway.
I agree.
And I think it's really interesting. But as a leader, you kind of look down on that and be like, okay, I'm not good at these things, so I need to build a team to do these things for me or do these things with me. But in addition, I need to be able to understand the construct of that team so that it is high functioning and it has got all the things it needs.
Yeah, I agree.
Baking cakes with lots of different ingredients. So how did you kind of, you talked about the leadership with in whānau, but then how did you earn your place to be able to get your first kind of professional opportunity as a leader?
Well, I went to university. I completed a Bachelor of Marketing and International Management at Waikato University. And then from there, I had my first role in a graduate role at a company which at the time was called Power New Zealand. It was the very beginning of deregulation of the electricity industry in New Zealand. So really exciting time to be a part of that. Lots of complexity, lots of huge amounts of change. So I did 2 years there, progressed through a couple of roles there, during the separation of the lines in the retail business and electricity. I did a couple of years there. Then I went to London for my big OE, and I worked for a major telco over there, which was WorldCom, no longer existing, one of the biggest collapses in corporate history.
Hopefully not on your leadership.
I didn't touch the money. So I was in a product marketing role there. Came back to New Zealand and spent 4 years at what's now Spark, was Telecom New Zealand at the time, in a range of initially product marketing roles and then through into customer marketing roles.
We look far too young to be able to call it telecom, of course.
Yes, of course. And ended up as consumer marketing manager for customer loyalty there.
And who helped you on that journey? Like, was there, when you think about kind of where you are from a skills perspective now, your capabilities now, what were the things that allowed you to step into that leadership? Did you have lots of support? Did you do lots of reading? Like did you kind of trust your instincts? What were the bits that allowed you to make that transition?
Well, I think there has to be, a real desire to do it. I believe that anything that we become good at are generally things that we enjoy because we're interested in them. We're therefore interested in learning about them. So I think you have to have a natural curiosity for it. I think I just had a grounding growing up. I had both my parents were entrepreneurs and business people, and I kind of was instilled with.
So they were building their own futures.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, they were building my future because they were very clear that I should choose my own path, and they didn't have any views on what that should be. It should be what I wanted to do. But what I think they did instill in me was, the things that I needed to develop in order to be able to do anything I wanted.
Be autonomous or
to be able to do anything I wanted. So I was brought up to believe that I could do anything I wanted. And, in order to do that, it was about getting an education and continuing to get an education, to continue to learn, to be curious, to be interested and keep learning was number one. Number two, look at everything, look for the positive and the opportunity in everything, in every outcome. work hard. You know, I remember my dad had a sign over his desk at home that said persistence, and that was a word we heard a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess that was probably my grounding. And
So
then
you built into these characteristics are part of your family's value set, right?
Yeah.
And so then you just expressed yourself professionally with that grounding.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
interesting that you talk about the leaders are readers, right? Like you hear that expression a lot. I think that you actually said just then, well, that's continuous learning. That was the discipline of actually always updating. I'm never the finished product. I'm always going to be learning.
That's right.
And now it is kind of like leaders are learners. And I think that especially in this day and age when you've got the pace of change as it stands at the moment, people are looking to their leaders to be able to explain or to be able to navigate through the tribulations and the trials that everyone's going through. Where do you pick up a lot of this learning from now? Like, do you have a discipline of listening to podcasts? Do you have a book always going? How are you learning? What are the mediums? Where are you learning from?
I look for it everywhere. So, you asked who my inspirations were or, who I learned from. I've been very fortunate in my professional career to always have, I've had incredible managers and leaders and mentors for myself, through all of that, and I've learned something from all of those people. So that's the first thing. And, that's professionally. It's also outside of that, community-based things as well. Some of the greatest lessons I learned on leadership were from the principal of my kids' primary school, where I was chair of the PTA, things like that. So I think other people, other leaders, people that report to me, my good friend and former COO at Triquestra, Steph Burke, she really taught me about the importance and the process of risk management and strategy and operations and decision making. I read, I listen to podcasts.
What's your favourite?
Just all of it. My favourite medium or my favourite. My favourite podcast? Well, actually, at the moment, I'm really enjoying the Dom Harvey podcast.
He did do one on
people.
Shag. He did one with the All Blacks coach, Steve Hansen.
Steve Hansen, great leader, obviously. Tim O'Connor, the Auckland Grammar headmaster, incredible lessons.
That's cool that you're looking at that local content as well.
Yeah.
Because I think New Zealand has a lot to offer as far as content goes.
I think so too.
Obviously like this. But I'm also curious, because if you are encouraging someone to step into leadership, and no doubt you've had a lot of great mentors, you've probably been a mentor yourself, where would you say, okay, this gives you some great principles, or I would encourage you to learn about these things, or when you're identifying your mentor, these are the things I would think about?
Yeah, well, I think university education was great for me, for the way that I learn. I'm not necessarily saying, and that's probably my biggest message for people learning to be leaders is know yourself and know your own learning style. What I'm keenly aware of is that, what works, there's all sorts of different leadership styles, there's all sorts of different learning styles. So I think focus a lot on your own self-awareness and working out what works for you. And, for me, that really structured university education worked very well. And then, going into a corporate environment really taught me about big business, about structure, about process, all of those things. And then going into a, what was an early stage company where market fit had been established, that really taught me to build the process, build the plane while it was flying, kind of thing as well. So, so I think,
It's interesting, right? Because you're talking about a lot of, initially starting with quite a lot of theoretical stuff and expressing it through practical application within that educational environment. And then you talk about kind of the environment teaching you a lot because you had to deal with those conditions, and that makes you be creative, makes you learn. And then, it sounds like there's a blend of things now where you're kind of looking at all these different inspirations, and you're listening to podcasts, you're reading books, but then you're experimenting with those things and trying them out in those, but then also thinking about the conditions and adapting your approach dependent upon those things. How am I going to learn from that person, or how am I going to learn from this situation, or how I'm going to learn. Yeah,
and what do I need to learn here?
Yeah, because I think that there's lots of people that, this whole how leaders are readers and that continuous learning. Often people are encouraged, I think, to read the books, to listen to podcasts. But you're right. Like some people don't learn like that. I know lots of people in my profession who learn through talking, through doing, through failing, and then getting that feedback back. So you know that whole understanding of how do I learn? Like when have I learned best? Because if I didn't like school, it's probably not going to be like that.
Yeah. What are you interested in?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. What are you curious
interested?
about?
And then examining how you've learned best and saying, okay, well, this is how I learn. I learn practically.
Yeah.
I learn from talking to people, right? And I know that from my own experience, if I want to ideate, I have to come up with a concept and then talk it through with someone. I can't just come up with a finished product.
Classic extrovert like me. Yeah. Whereas
Absolutely.
introverts, and I've learned this from working in the tech sector for so long,
Yeah.
you know, it's a lot of introverts, incredibly intellectual people
Yes.
who do not like to, you know, talk about ideas till they're more fully formed.
Yeah.
You know, and they like to have a discussion and then walk away, process it and come back. Whereas I'm like, well, what's the answer? What do you think?
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
John. And that's my mum was saying that introverts and extroverts. There's a whole bunch of new analysis being done around this. I'm a communal extrovert apparently.
Okay.
But she's an outrovert. An outrovert.
Oh.
And so an outrovert is someone who doesn't feel like they belong anywhere,
Oh.
which is kind of depressing.
Yeah.
But very contrarian thinkers.
Yes,
and individually.
okay.
And so the way you deal with someone like that is you give them a concept, they go away and they come back.
Yeah.
Like an introvert.
Fantastic.
But introverts are also a lot more critical, apparently.
Introverts?
Yes.
Oh, 100%.
And partly, potentially maybe that's because there's a lot of self-criticism. But you actually, you think about the... what are the hats? The guy
Edward
who
de
talks,
Bono.
De Bono's hats.
Yeah.
Like in thinking about the hats that those roles those people can play within your teams, right?
So fun.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, trying to get the black hat off some people and the white hat onto them. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And exercising futility
I love
sometimes.
that. I love that process.
Yeah, me too. And so when you think about the kind of your leadership journey, what's that kind of piece of feedback that you got from someone early on that you've carried with you? Obviously, critical feedback is painful to receive from time to time, but what's that piece of feedback that you kind of used and it's helped you to grow, and then you also use it with the teams that you're building?
That's a good question. Pay attention to the detail. I used to get that feedback a lot.
Is that because there was something that happened that you needed to then deal with?
Probably many things. It's probably not my strength. And I think maybe that's the feedback that's resonated the most is, know yourself, know your own strengths and weaknesses and build a team around that. I mean, I think, again, just be open to feedback and surround yourself with people that will challenge you and people who will give you real feedback in a constructive way. I think some of the healthiest relationships are those that have quite a lot of tension. You have to have a high level of respect, but also, a reasonable amount of tension to keep learning and growing and getting better. Yeah.
I do have a theory that you need to surround yourself with people that have enough of the same values as you to be able to make clear decisions that you can understand, but enough difference that you don't exist inside an echo chamber, and it creates that friction.
Yeah, of
because
course.
that tension, like you said, that tension is something that can be incredibly productive. But you need to trust that person is going to come from the right level of values or decision making, so that you can get along, so you can reach a healthy outcome. I think that any great environment has a level of tension and demand in it from the different people, because actually you're not going to get the best result unless you are pushing each other.
And I think I really, you touched on trust, and I think that's absolutely key, because I think you can't just launch into that. You have to build a culture around that, which is a safe place where you genuinely encourage diversity of thinking and being and constructive challenge. And to do that, you have to have quite good structures. You need to be clear about what each person's role is. You need to have a respect for each other's skills, and I think that's where we were particularly lucky at TQ with both our board and our exec leadership team. particularly in boards, I think, that have founders, you hear a lot of horror stories about boards bringing in independent directors and it not going well because perhaps the founder doesn't give the independent director enough space, and the independent, and I think at TQ we just had an enormous amount of very different skill sets, very different perspective on our board, and clarity of roles. Spend a lot of time on that, and just this deep respect for each other and the ability to speak openly.
Yeah, and I think that talk about culture, talk about that, but was that skill set emergent, or was that by design that those people were brought onto?
But by design,
right?
But also it required a mindset, from two founder shareholders and board members. It required a mindset to actually be open to that and to value those skill sets and different points of view.
The culture thing's a funny one, because everyone talks about culture. Everyone talks about culture. Leaders are create cultures, and when you really ask someone to say, how did you build a high-performing culture? It's quite difficult because it's very difficult. It takes a long time for that to happen, because culture is the lagging indicator of a whole bunch of difficult or deliberate decisions that have happened, as leading indicators, where you're talking about systems of decision making, you're talking about the types of people that you're bringing into the organisation, you're talking about what you tolerate and what you don't tolerate, and you're talking about what are the stories in the organisation that are seen as good stories and bad stories. Got this theory you talk about. The guy who wrote, can't remember his name now, but he wrote Sapiens, and he talked about how you've got values, and so values are just the way that you make decisions. Everyone's got values on the wall, integrity and blah blah blah, but values are really the way that you make decisions, and so you have this continuum of like kindness over success or whatever that, and those values create decisions which create behaviours, and those behaviours create stories, and those stories reinforce the values, and so you have this this endless kind of triangle of continuous kind of reinforcement of values, and the emergent thing that comes from that is culture.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
And then you have overlaying that of the systems and the processes and all those sort of things which generate the scale of that culture. I've got, it's really interesting because I think that it's often seen as a bit of a throwaway line of like, we've got a great culture. It's like, but how?
Because we have a football table.
Yeah, we've got some free snacks.
Yeah.
But no, it's actually the decisions and the behaviours and the stories that create that thing. So when we talk about like culture, once you've got that good culture, what are the kind of the frameworks or methods you'd use to be able to harness that culture, to be able to actually set up kind of delivery, right? Because culture's great, like you said, table tennis tables and foosball and free snacks and stuff, but actually good culture is about high performance, about that the whole machine clicking and working together. So how do you take those frameworks and methods to be able to create delivery within that great culture?
Well, I think delivery is part of culture, so I think I think you don't necessarily get or achieve culture. Culture's a living thing, and it's a set of expectations and, as you say, values and behaviours that are persistent over time. So I think it's about creating systems that make clear what the behaviours are or what the values are in the organisation, and without posters on the wall, or in addition to posters on the wall, what behaviours are required in the organisation.
Yeah.
I think it's about setting expectations and getting buy-in to what, I think always starting with why, why we're here, why we're doing what we're doing, and therefore what outcomes do we need to achieve, and then, tying strategy, spending that time on strategy, but then also, where I think sometimes this falls down is the the translation into execution and delivery plans. So, and just having very disciplined approach to execution.
Is there any like framework or method that you look to? And I know that agile's kind of a dirty word now, and safe agile is kind of a little bit of some organisations would say it's a failed experiment. But what do you have any, like, is there a set of principles or the delivery leaders that you talk to, or what do you do?
I mean, I think it's always about taking the foundations of things and adapting them for the organisation, the objectives,
Yes.
all of those types of things. So, for me,
No one size fits all.
no one size fits all, and it is about and I think this is where the human element comes into it. All of those, if you take project management, for instance, if you implement really rigorous, great, proven frameworks like PMI, things like that, if you follow those exactly, it doesn't guarantee a successful project. What guarantees a successful project is thinking around the top of it. So, I think what's really some of the things that are really important around that are metrics, being clear about priorities, having good risk and issue management in place.
What kind of metrics did you set up, like for Triquestra during its heyday? And it was delivering it. It generated customer experiences that were excellent. What were you measuring to be able to ensure that delivery was happening, and you had clear line of sight?
That changed over time.
Right.
So it depended on what our strategy was. When I first started at TQ, the industry looked very different. Technology looked very different. So that really drove, our strategy, which was essentially, why do we exist? What problems are we trying to solve? What opportunities are we trying to unlock for which businesses or groups of people? And how can we be better than anyone else at it? So then once you establish that, it's about, okay, well, what does good look like? So then, you decide based on that. So, we had metrics across product management, around sales, around customer retention.
I think everyone's
customer
got metrics
experience.
for sales.
Yeah, we all have metrics for that. But so.
And then once you were kind of a little level of maturity, did those things change? Like, were you looking at LTV? Were you looking at CAC? I mean, were you talking about all those core kind of SaaS metrics? Yeah,
all of those metrics at different times. My philosophy is to keep metrics really light and really relevant. And again, what are we trying to achieve here, and don't measure things for the sake of it. What measurements are going to, or what targets are going to drive the kind of outcomes that we need and incent people to deliver to our strategy, basically. And so when you're out at the moment, out at the moment. So when you look ahead, what do you think our sector really needs? I think we need training and upskilling. I think that's probably that's always been the case. But I think clearly the two big things that are coming: AI, how we apply those to our businesses, and data underlying that. I think those are your two kind of big red flashing lights. Yeah, for me, for the digital sector, I think we need to be innovating and leading in that space. Yeah, what do you think it's going to take? We're just spitballing here. Time and investment. Yeah, the space for from government policy as well as kind of private sector. Bit of both. Bit of both. We need the government to commit to policies and regulation that work for that, and support for businesses, and we need businesses to be buying in and training people. Yeah, the data one is kind of a given. I think that's obviously with the advent of the change in technology, people are going to need more data. More data is going to be generated. Yeah. There needs to be some governance and policy around those things, and around the artificial intelligence side of things. Everyone's looking at the benefits of it. Yes, there are some significant risks. Yeah. I guess my key concern for New Zealand is that if you look at the registered companies out there, let's say a low estimate of SME would be 80% of organisations. Mm-hmm. We know that it's going to touch every single organisation, every single person. Most Kiwi businesses, not necessarily in the tech sector, but most Kiwi businesses are owner-operators. Yes. Who are working in the business, not on the business. Yes. And so, what do we do about that? Like, how do we raise that awareness? The politicising from the government, but that training and stuff that you were talking about, and how to deal with these things. What do you think the technology sector can do for either local businesses or how are we going to sort that bit out? Good question.
I don't know the answer. I'm not holding you to that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a $1 billion question.
Yes, it is, and there's lots of things like that. But I think, educating those businesses, I agree with you. It is often about the day to day, but educating them about the opportunities of those businesses. Their technology partners leaning in and providing education and support. And
the government supplementing perhaps that journey, because everyone's been bemoaning the fact that we sit down the bottom of the productivity chart for the OECD for so long.
Yes.
And the induction and replacement of systems with this new technology that's coming along with automation and AI should be the major step change to that, and we are equipped. The good thing about these owner-operators is they can make decisions.
Oh, absolutely. And they can move fast.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, I think very good at determining what the problem is rather than solution. I think, like any technology, there is sometimes a temptation to put the technology in because it's the technology. And because it's the technology, you need to do AI. Well, it's not about that. Like any technology implementation, it's like, well, what is a problem in my business, or where is an opportunity to automate or make my business more efficient or to grow revenue, really, and can AI solve that? I think that's really key.
Yeah, conscious it took us
and those businesses.
40 minutes to start talking about AI, which is good effort.
No, terrible.
And what's this kind of the scariest thing on the horizon for you? When you talk about this data and AI needing a lot of attention, what's the scariest thing coming at the horizon for the local sector?
I don't know if it's scary, but I think there's a lot of ambiguity and there's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of fast change. And so I think that we need to be really courageous about that, and we need to move into that. But certainly, what is scary is the level of misinformation, the level of polarisation, and those are kinds of things. It's interesting to see what, EU are doing around, transparency of, Switzerland developing their own LLM with total transparency. There's some really interesting things happening in that space, and I think misinformation is probably the scariest thing.
Yeah, well, if you think about the ingestion of data and misinformation into the LLMs, it's like
and just the lack of clarity,
the consequences of that.
Yeah,
I was talking to someone the other day, and they said that the challenge of training new models right now is that you've got all these LLMs that were created on historic data, but the new models are now being trained on the current information, which is all full of all the garbage that AI has already generated into the data set. And so, it's like, the real gold is the old models now, and so suddenly, it's really interesting to see the way that things will adapt.
Yes.
What do you kind of predict that's going to happen with the New Zealand technology sector? And that's both from an optimistic perspective or a pessimistic perspective, from what having popped out?
Well, I think what's really heartening and exciting is seeing so much more offshore investment in New Zealand. So, and a lot of tech companies, a lot more tech companies. Most founders I speak to now are talking about going global from day one. Yeah. And just the amount of capital that's being raised offshore. And of course, that capital comes with expertise and, different networks and opportunities and things, access, knowledge. So I think that's really exciting. The likes of Halter and Tracksuit with massive raises and, and just, really kind of that thinking bigger is really exciting for the sector. So I think our ecosystem has to be doing more to, continuing, and, there's been a lot of encouragement for that, but I think continuing to support that with advice and networks. I think obviously the risk with that is that, those results and exits are kind of expected to be faster. So I think we need to support those as much as possible, and then we also need to include and enable the amazingly exciting tech businesses, huge volumes of them here in New Zealand, that are innovating and taking a slower approach to growth and building longer term value, and both are really
spoken from personal experience.
Spoken from personal experience, but I think both are just really key to keeping New Zealand as an innovation hub and incubator. And
it's so over the last couple of years certainly we've seen a lot of organisations that maybe have potential for growth and were cash starved funding starved because there just isn't enough access to capital in New Zealand or not easy access, and some of that stuff is because we are the last kind of stop. You've got a lot of money in the States, you've got a decent amount of money in Asia and in Europe, and then Australia, and then New Zealand, right?
Yes.
And so we kind of get the dregs a little bit from time to time. It's neat to see organisations like Halter and Tracksuit, but that money is, like you said, largely from offshore. And those big bang kind of funding rounds to give them the runway are not locally based. So I think that it would be interesting to see what availability there could be for more locally based funding organisations that could trigger. And we've actually got one of the most active angel communities in the world. We've got more angels, I think, per capita than any other country in the world.
Right.
And so, which is neat. But at the moment, those angels ain't got too much cash because we're with the economic dip. So, high hopes in the midterm, I guess. But in the short term, there's a lot of hungry technology organisations that aren't getting funding unless they have AI in their title or their product, or they are not got some global connections or historic kind of founders who have seen success before.
Yes.
So, you're in a powerful position.
Wow.
Which is good. And, what do you think? Is there any kind of jurisdictions, given that you have dealt with offshore investment and offshore or people, is there anywhere that you would say is a preference for a jurisdiction that we can look to learn from a funding or from a product development perspective? Any, like the US or the UK or any lessons that they've learned that you think that we should bring back here?
No, in short, I think, again, it depends on the organisation and the aspirations and, taking inspiration from that.
Yeah. And what do you think the sector needs right now, other than what I've said, money? From a skills perspective, we're still sorely lacking in cyber skills. We're still sorely lacking in data skills. We're still sorely lacking in artificial intelligence and machine learning skills. Is there anything else that the sector needs right now from your perspective?
Well, I don't know if we're lacking in it, but I think we need adaptive leadership.
Yes.
The number one thing is, with the pace of change now, I think, and you touched on experienced leaders who have been through, growing global businesses and exiting like I have, but and that's great. But I think what you need to be looking for from that experience is a demonstrable ability to navigate growth and change and ambiguity rather than what they've actually done, because what got us here won't get us there. And I think if there's a temptation to look and, because I think leaders have to spend their time in the past, mostly in the present and in the future. And that balance, I think, is changing because, historically we've leaned a lot on our experience of what we've done in the past to learn and to use our intuition for what to do next and our knowledge of what to do next. And I think leaders really have to continue to look to the past to draw those key lessons and what they know, but they really need to develop increasingly those skills of thinking about the future. With the world changing so fast, we need different skills and we need more evidence. We need data sources, we need more evidence, we need more perspectives on issues. I really think, and I talked about, solving a problem before understanding, or solving before really understanding the problem. And I think that's a really crucial element of leadership, is really understanding the decision that needs to be made, the problem that's trying to be solved, all those kinds of things, really understanding that from a lot of different perspectives, getting the data to really, and not data just to support my view, which I think is a bit of a
it's
moment.
Bad science.
Yeah, bad science, to take us forward. So I think, that's probably another area that we really need to build skill in.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right, because these things, I think that metrics, etc., what we talked about before, the measurement of data and being able to deliver the right outcomes and understand whether you're executing or whether you are delivering or solving the problem is great. But to be able to predict trends, to be able to extrapolate from the past, intuition's great. Learning from people who have used that kind of data, but those data sources don't really exist, right? And so I think it's going to be very interesting for leaders looking to the future to be able to say, well, how do I get this information?
Yes.
Where am I going to get it from? So that I can make the best guess. However, because of the advent and the advances in technology, if we're just talking about creating software, experiments now will be cheap. Like, you can fail fast, you can pivot quickly, you can get stand up new features and deliver these things and run experiments and then get that data to be able to figure out stuff. And so I think it's also about being brave that like failure is going to be an even bigger part of developing new technology and services and businesses in the future.
And that can sound, it can sound a bit chaotic, but
I think it's going to be really chaotic.
a bit of chaos. But I think as part of that, it is also about what is certain, what can we control, what is known, and spending time to understand that, and what is negotiable and what isn't, and what will we change and flex on, so that you have that framework there as well.
Do you think that young founders coming through now, or young executives in the technology sector, do you think that they have enough resources to be able to learn fast enough to be able to, it's a bit of a leading question, but do you think they have the resources and the mentorship and the availability of advice to be able to navigate this stuff effectively from you've popped out and you're looking back in now?
Yes. Probably, yes, I do believe that. I think, they have to go looking for. I think they've certainly got the intellectual capacity, and the understanding of the pace of change, and the mental horsepower to adapt those kinds of skills. Yeah,
it's cool. Well, look, it sounds like you've got high hopes and a strong belief in what the tech sector has to offer the world, which is neat to see, given that you've already done it and you've done the hard yards. Yeah. So, look, thank you very much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you.
Today.
Lovely.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you.
This is your captain speaking.